Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Update 2.65 has been released onto the beta server, so today we're going to be checking that out. The changelog's not out yet, but I'm going to be covering the Pandawa changes and the changes to the common spells, such as leek release, all that. Some variants have been introduced, new spells have been introduced, and the changes to Panda are fantastic. I've done a quick overview for myself. I've looked into the spells to give you guys a presentation, and it looks super interesting. So let's take a look. Before we get to the Pandawa changes, let's do the common spells. Let's go. All right, let's review the common spells. A lot of changes have been made. Some of the spells we're used to have had tweaks to them. There's now variants, there's new spells. A lot of stuff to overview, but we'll go over it as quickly and as best as I can. So a lot of the spells we know. So like release, now it has a variant. It's provocation. It does the opposite effect. It pulls from all around you, similar to a Sakura's influx, but it doesn't do damage and it has longer range. We got leek, which has gotten a long-awaited change. Instead of it being int based, it now hits in your best element. Mine happens to be chance, but of course it's going to depend on your set. So that's pretty cool because it used to just favor int players and give them an extra spell that other elements don't have access to. So that's really cool. Next up we got Cowet, which now has a variant, Beefy Cowet, which gives you shields when you hit it. Pretty cool. I guess you could use in combination. Worth noting, actually. Let me review this real quick. So leek variant is burnt pie. Okay, so you would think, why the hell would I use burnt pie? Because what it does is it hits in your worst element. But I can see burnt pie being used with beefy cowet, since you don't want to kill the cowet, but you want to hit it to get the shield. So I could imagine myself playing burnt pie and then putting down a beefy cowet to hit it to get some shields. Just an idea. Next up, you have Perfidious Boomerang. The changes they made to Perfidious Boomerang are amazing. Very interesting spell now. Before it was 5 AP, a pretty decent recast interval, I think, every other turn. I'm not too sure. I think it was every other turn. They haven't really touched that, but it was 5 AP, hit pretty hard, is random. Now it's 3 AP, hits less hard, still steals HP, but the difference that they've done that I think is much more useful to players is the stat stealing. So let's say I hit Perfidious Boomerang. Boom, I also get strength, right? And actually, for example, now that just changed my leek element to neutral because I stole strength. So it's pretty cool. It can give some like dynamicism to the gameplay. I don't know if that's a word. We also have this here, which is just some glyph. This particular glyph takes off MP if you spell on it. It is dodgeable. The variant of it, I believe, gives you range. So anyone can put this. You can put it down if you need range. You can step back and forth on it, get some range, then hit across the map. Major Arachne and Chafer. The changes basically just come through the variant. They've played around with the possibility of getting a Major Arachne and a crit Chafer versus the regular ones. And the variants are just stronger because you're more likely to get the stronger variation. Not much to it. Weapon skill now has a variant, which is Rust. Very cool, because let's say you play a build where you know you're not going to use your weapon. Then you'd play Rust, because what it does, it's 2 AP, lasts for 2 turns. What it does is if someone hits you with their weapon, they will now get negative weapon damage. So if they hit you with their weapon again, it'll just hit less. So instead of it being an offensive spell, now it's a defensive spell. Pretty cool. Lastly, they've introduced one spell for each element. So far we have utility spell, utility spell, utility spell, summon, utility spell. And this one hits in your best element, and this one's random. But we also have one specific elemental spell. Each one's slightly different. This one, Cannon Bubble, it just hits really far. It's a chance spell. Hits super far, though. Like, that's pretty crazy. And it removes crits. I think the variant gives you crits. If I'm not mistaken, yes, the variant gives you crits. You have Mantis Croc, which is a strength one. You have to be a lot closer. I think this variant takes off dodge, or no, gives you dodge, and the variant gives you lock. Grunob's Serum. So this one's actually pretty interesting mechanic to it. What it does is it works like a fulminating arrow. So if I hit here, if there was an enemy here, up to 5, it's going to just rebound between them. So boom. Kind of like a fulminating arrow, or I think Bloodthirsty Madness, Sakura spell, works in the same way. The variant of the one that I just showed you, Grunob, is the same lightning strike that we're used to, but now it also gives heals to, it doesn't heal, it gives heals to your allies in the zone. You got Moonhammer, which was changed, and a variant's been introduced. So it used to be 6 AP, now it's 3. Used to do -1 range, now it does -2. It hits a lot less. I can imagine Agility Eliotropes being a bit cheesed by this because I know they would use like Conjuration and Moonhammer to do like a super heavy single hit, which would come in handy. No longer, unfortunately. And plus, it used to hit 7 range, so sometimes it would be very useful for them since Ridicule only has 6, I think. Anyhow, the variant is Darkly Moonhammer, which boosts your range. So you can either remove their range, boost your range, give yourself lock or dodge with the strength one, remove their crits, boost your crits. So that's kind of what the variants do on that front. That's enough. That's enough for the common spells. Let's take a look at the Pandawa changes. Before we begin, I'd like to propose a moan of silence for all of the XLII leechers who, following this update, will no longer be able to do that, meaning they will no longer be able to support their families. So a moment of silence for their families, not for them. Okay, fantastic. So let's take a look at some of the Pandawa changes. Essentially, what Incumbents tried to do is they've really tried to centralize the class around what they consider to be its two core characteristics. One of which is the drunk versus sober state, and the other one is pick up and throwing. So what I've done is I've overviewed the spells and I've broken them down into groups to give you guys a simplified overview. I'm not going to review every spell in detail, because for that you could just log yourself and read the spells. I don't want to sit here and read them. Instead, I've broken them down into groups. So first of all, let's just take a look at some of the utility spells. The biggest change that has happened is, well, one of the biggest changes is Karcham, which is the reason which I say rip to the XLII leechers. Now when you pick an ally up, they become pacifist state. Or an enemy, I think, for that matter, but I'm not too sure. I can't pick anyone up because it actually crashes the game. So that's an unintended side effect. So if you pick someone up, they go pacifist. What does that mean? It means that no longer can you have a combo or a duo where you just pick up your ally who's in a full glass cannon set, the panda's in a tank set, and they just clear out all the mobs. You can't do that anymore, which was really, really abused for duos and stuff. And this actually will also be reflected in PvP, because that, and in combination with another one of their goals, which was to nerf the effectiveness of stabilization. So before, what would happen is stabilization is literally just a form of invulnerability. Stabilize yourself as the panda, pick someone up, especially in 3v3 PvP, right? You have someone who you're targeting, the person who you're eroding, right? And then the panda just goes stabilization on themselves, picks them up, they are now invulnerable. So now that person who's invulnerable, sure, they're invulnerable, but they can also no longer deal damage and stay up there, right? So it's not quite as free. They've also done some things to tempt you to pick the variant of stabilization. Where the fuck is it? Which is Sherpa. I'll talk about that in a second, but essentially what it is Sherpa, just having the spell selected, now gives you a passive through some of your summons. Before we get to that, let's talk about Boozer and Blowout. So Boozer no longer reduces as much damage as it did before. Before, if you were in the drunk state through Boozer, you would take 75% damage. Now you take 80. It's 5%. Boohoo, get over it. But yeah, so now Blowout, what it does is it no longer debuffs you. So as before, where it debuffed you, now you have a separate spell, Bamboo Milk, which is what debuffs you and brings you back to the sober state. Now you can still go back to the sober state with this, of course, but this is another way to do it. And this is actually quite beneficial because honestly, the self debuff can be useful, but nowadays with this game where everyone is boosting each other, always boosts going around, I find that you debuff useful things more often than you debuff unuseful things. So let's take a look at the spells. Again, I did break them down into some groups. So let's take a look at the general idea of most of the groups. So you have one group of spells, which what it does is you have a spell that hits a certain damage at a certain range. If I'm in the drunk state, it's going to hit more, but at a shorter range. Okay, so that's the same case for Explosive Flash, Melancholy, and I think some other spells from the other elements as well. You have another category, which the spell becomes a life-stealing spell if you hit them in the if you do it in the drunk state. And the thing that's special about those spells is they also put you in the drunk state after the first hit. So examples of this would be Alkoshu, Liquor, I think Filthy Pint, Absinthe. So all the elements have it, where essentially the first hit is a regular hit. It's going to put me into the drunk state, okay? And it's going to make me change the spell into a life-stealing spell. So pretty interesting, and I can use this to come back to the sober state. You have another group of spells which are only active once you pick someone up. So Propulsion, for example, you pick someone up and you want to throw them. The old propulsion, it used to do, I guess, what the new vertigo does, which is hit and push around a plus sign, right? I can't show you because it would just crash the game. But the new propulsion, for example, you throw someone, it attracts everyone in a line, in like similar to this, but not as big. I think it's only 3. Attracts everyone and then hits. This one hits and then repels. This one heals, and this one's just waterfall, but now it also does damage when you throw. So pretty cool. So that's another category as well. Then you have some utility ones. For example, here, eviction in the sober state teleports me to the other side of them. If I'm in the drunk state, it teleports them to the other side of me, right? You have distillation, where if I'm in the sober state, it's going to apply an end of turn poison. That's very cool. If I'm in the drunk state, it's going to do negative range. Not as cool. Let's be honest. You have explosive palm. Very, very cool spell. The way it works is you can cast it 3 times per target. Whether you're in the drunk state or in the sober state has a different positive effect, but you can stack them, and then your third hit has both stacks. So let's review what that would look like. I'm in the drunk state. I'm going to hit Explosive Palm. It's going to give me plus 10 damage. I'm going to go to the sober state. I'm going to hit it again. It's going to hit harder, and now it becomes a zone spell. So now I have the plus 10 damage plus zone spell capability. So I'm actually hitting in a zone and harder. Just mechanically speaking, that's very exciting. It's very dynamic. It seems very cool. And other elements have similar things, where once you switch between them, it has different effects. Numbness, either negative MP or negative MP parry. You have stuff like Panda Attack, which... So this one is like the first one that I showed you, but it's also in a zone, and they do have that a fair bit, where they have a lot of zone spells. Like most of the... Not most, but a lot of the Panda spells are now zone spells. Even Alcoholic Breath, okay? You have to be in the drunk state for this one, but it pushes back, and it pushes back in a straight line zone. So that's very cool. You have this that removes crits. I don't think this depends. Well, you have to be in the drunk state, it says. So that's interesting. One other change they've done, I'm not sure if I mentioned this, the fermentation versus vulnerability. They've nerfed vulnerability. It now gives less of a damage increase on the opponent. And they put it the variant of fermentation. They're trying to discourage tank pandas. So they don't want pandas who just cast fermentation to stay alive and then do vulnerability ×2 to help their allies, and that's their whole turn. Vulnerability is less strong, and fermentation is now the variant. Not that fermentation was ever super useful. Like if you're optimized enough, you have Black Spotted, you have Emerald Dophus, you have at least 500 shields a turn regardless, so it doesn't matter too much. Some spells are still the same. Pendihu is still similar. This one's cool, so let's see if I can use Schnapps. It's not particularly interesting, but it's no longer in that diagonal. It has such a big range, and it has a cool zone to it. A lot of zone spells. And if I'm in the drunk state, it's going to do a negative MP reduction. You still have Tipple, which does negative AP reduction. So a lot of things to consider on Panda. It's pretty overwhelming. I would say log on to beta, take your time going through the spells, and read everything one by one. Before we finish up, I have a few more things to show you. Pandinurus can no longer be cast turn 1. What they're trying to discourage is pandas who turn 1, do Pandinurus, get hella MP, rush in, pick someone up, and bring them back to their team, that sort of thing. They're trying to discourage that. The variant is Pandawa's Hand, which is pretty sick spell. I feel like it's got to be changed, but we'll see. Minus 500 power for 1 turn. And then if you're in the sober state, it's going to hit pretty hard in 1 element. And if you're in the drunk state, it's a multi-element hit. So, boom. Hits pretty hard. And minus 500 power is pretty crazy. Although it's only for 1 turn, can be instantly debuffed. I don't know. We'll definitely have to see how this plays out. But the last thing I want to show you guys is with the summons. So I can't actually show you, unfortunately, but the way it is now is when you pick up a barrel, it's going to either instantly heal you or instantly give you power. So I can't actually click it, but that's what it would do in theory. This one would give you heals, this one would give you power, and picking it up doesn't actually cost you any AP, and throwing it doesn't cost you any AP. So it's kind of a free way in which you can make use of propulsion vertigo. So again, they're trying to push that whole pick up and throwing aspect. So you can play with your summons, right? You put this barrel down, you pick it up, you get power, and you throw it using not Karchan, but like one of these, and you can have some cool combinations to be had there. I think I mentioned Sherpa, but I didn't exactly mention what it does. So when it comes to the Wasta and the bamboo, you can now climb on top of the Wasta similar to how you climb on top of bamboo, but only if you have the Sherpa the Sherpa spell selected from the variants. I would say that's basically it. Everything else you would just want to read in game. I'm looking forward to the changelog. If it comes out anytime soon, I'll try and include it in the description of this video, but I don't think it will. I've been waiting on it all morning, so nothing on that front. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more reviews of more parts of the update, because there's more to it than just the common spells and the panda changes, let me know in the comments. I will be happy to review it. And if you enjoyed this video, thumbs up, all that good stuff. I will see you next time. Have a great day and goodbye.